As we come now to Genesis chapter 32, we come across yet another profoundly strange and difficult to grasp event in the life of Jacob. Jacob has escaped from Laban, had his final conversation with Laban, agreed with Laban that God would keep an eye on both of them. But he gets closer and closer to a encounter with his brother Esau. Now, some of the chapter is devoted to Jacob's scheme on how he's going to handle this situation. And there are a couple things we should take note of about this scheme. One, Jacob is still scheming. That is to say, Jacob is not determined, I need to go see my brother Esau and I need to repent and take the consequences of my own actions. No, he's going to try and almost seduce Esau with wealth. I'm going to send him some of the prosperity that I've received that's coming with me. I'm going to invest in my own safety by sending these gifts to Esau, and I'm going to do it in a way that I'm hoping is going to blow him over. Not just because there's a lot, but I'm going to hand it to him a bit at a time. There's a sense in which he's like an infomercial. But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. But I want you to see something else that comes out of this strategy. One, it's a strategy that also is designed to appeal to that which is most base in Esau, his greed. Secondly, I want you to see that he stays in the back of the line of all this stuff. He sends these sort of subdivisions of his wealth in bunches to go to see Esau first while he stays at the end, at the back, which is a scheming thing as well, because if it doesn't go well, if Esau isn't changed and grateful and excited about all of this wealth, well, then Jacob can always run away. Jacob can always escape. He's going to be in that place where he can save his own life and perhaps start again. You can see that even more clearly when you realize that at the end of almost the end of the placement of everyone in this line, this group with the wealth and this group with the wealth and this group with the wealth, then his wives and his 11 children cross over at the ford of the river while Jacob stays on the other side. Now, Jacob is all alone. And remember, we've seen Jacob sleeping alone and strange things happen. And so it happens here. And we're told that Jacob has a dream or a vision and that he wrestles with a man who is also called the angel of the Lord's host, who's also called in another context God. And the wrestling match goes on all night long. And it looks as though God himself is not going to be able to prevail over Jacob until he harms Jacob's hip or his thigh. He wounds Jacob. Now, I think that's profoundly significant in helping us to understand what's going on here. Because one of the lessons that we should be picking up as we go through this book of Genesis, as I've said many times before, every one of our heroes has feet of clay. Every one of these patriarchs who are being presented to us is possibly the answer to the promise that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. Every one of them fails. And the same is true of Jacob. He is maturing. He is growing. He is learning from some of his past mistakes, but he is not finished yet. In his strategy with Esau, there's no outright deception. There's no lie being told. There's just a kind of manipulation. And so I don't think we can we can both see this as progress, but also see it as really not the best, highest character kind of approach to the question. But there's something even more significant here. If you remember when we talked about Jacob's deception of Isaac and of Esau, we drew a parallel between that and Isaac's deception of Abimelech and Abraham's deception of the Pharaoh, and even more so, Abraham's going into Hagar and marrying her. What those all have in common is they're all accounts of people who have heard promises from God, believed those promises, but then lacked the patience to get out of the way and wait for God to do what he's promised to do. In each of those instances, the hero in question chooses sin instead of waiting and trusting. Now remember, it was God himself who had told Jacob to go back home. And he was thinking, well, when I go back, the reason I left is because I was in danger from Esau. When I go back, I'm still going to be in danger from Esau. For all I know, Esau has been living his life under a massive dark cloud of bitterness. For all I know, he's barely stayed alive because I robbed him of every kind of blessing that could have blessed him. For all I know, he could have been plotting revenge every day. To his credit, Jacob does go. But in his weakness, Jacob is trying to figure out how to win this challenge, how to make it through this difficulty based on his own cleverness. What can I do? How can I make this work out? And the plan that he comes up with is a plan fraught with uncertainty. He doesn't know if this is going to work at all. And so he's going into a kind of battle, resting in, but not comfortably resting in, more like tossing and turning in his own cleverness, his own methods of manipulation. So isn't it possible that God came and appeared to Jacob to help Jacob learn his dependence upon God? Now, again, different parts of the text and different texts make reference to a man, an angel, and God. Well, which is it? Well, I want to suggest to you that it's both. That this being that Jacob wrestled with had the appearance of a man. And in that sense, was a man. Just like the angels that came and appeared before Abraham, they looked like men. They ate like men. They talked like men. So in this sense, this being that appears and wrestles with Jacob looks like a man. And that's fine. But it may be that in reality, this thing that looks like a man was an angel. Now, I'm going to suggest there are two different ways that could be so. First of all, there's nothing wrong with seeing this being as an angel, like any other angel in the heavenly array of angels. An angel, that word angel in the Greek comes from the word to send. An angel is one who is sent, and they're sent as an emissary or an ambassador. They're sent to speak with all the authority of the one who sends them, which gives us a hint about how it could be both an angel and God. That is, it could be, in one sense, just an angel, but in another sense, because it's an angel sent by God, entrusted by God, empowered by God to speak for God, that it's perfectly appropriate to call this being God as well. But there is a third option. It's possible that this angel is the same angel that will appear later when Joshua is looking at the great walls of Jericho and wondering how God will help him to prevail. And when he's there, he looks up and there's a man. Well, someone who appears like a man. And Joshua makes the mistake of asking this question: are you for us or against us? And the answer he gets is no. No, but as the captain of the Lord's hosts have I now come. Do you know what that language, the Lord's hosts, what that refers to? The Lord's host refers to the innumerable company of angels. So the captain of the Lord's hosts is the one who is in charge of all the angels, which is one of the reasons why, although there's another reason why, because Joshua responds by bending down and worshiping this being, who does not correct Joshua and say, get up. So some have postulated, and I happen to find this helpful, but hold on to it tentatively. Some have speculated that this is a pre-incarnate appearance of the second person of the Trinity. And if that's the case with respect to Joshua, it could also be the case here. And that's how you get man, angel, God all mixed up in this single story with this single being. So the theory is that there they are and they're wrestling. They're wrestling on purpose. They're wrestling in accordance with the plan of God. And his goal is not so much to defeat Jacob as it is to teach Jacob. Well, what does Jacob need to learn? Jacob needs to learn to not rest in his own power, to not depend upon his own intelligence and his own strategy. To put it another way, friends, what Jacob needs to learn is grace. When God said, on his way away from Esau, and he appeared to Jacob at Bethel on the ladder that reached up to heaven, in that context, God didn't say, okay, Jacob, you don't need to be afraid because I've given you unbelievable power. I've given you a mind that's able to outsmart everybody. I've given you the muscles and the strength of Samson. That's not what he said. What he said, what he gave him, was his presence. I will be with you. Wherever you go, I will be with you. And so now Jacob, who's heard that and who's lived for many years having heard that, but also not yet learning to rest in God's presence, is coming into now the most dangerous encounter of his life. And he's still trusting himself. I don't want you to think that when God determines not to lose to Jacob, but to let Jacob think that he's doing okay, that was hard for God. God could have wiped him out, of course, in an instant. Not just dislocating his hip. God could have said, let there be no Jacob, and there would be no Jacob. He's all powerful. There's no question about that. So this is not a real battle to see who is stronger. But what it is it's again a lesson for Jacob to learn his dependence on the strength and the power of the living God. Your strategy, Jacob, is not going to help you with Esau. I will. Your cleverness, Jacob, is not going to help you with Esau. I will. When I told you I would go with you, I didn't mean I wanted to watch the mighty deeds you do. When I told you I would go with you, I wanted you to rest in the mighty deeds that I was promising to do. And just so you know who's who here, just so you realize that you really are no match for me, and in fact no one is, I'm going to give you this limp. Now what does that limp do? Well, it does two things. One, it teaches him to lean on God. It teaches exactly the point that I have been making. It humbles Jacob. It affirms Jacob's dependence. But there's a second thing it does as well. It makes Jacob unable to flee if his strategy fails. This is like the crossing of the Rubicon. This is God saying to Jacob, guess what? You're not going to be able to flee. You might as well go forward because there's nothing, no safety, no security for you going backward. Because you're not going to be able to flee from Esau because of what I've done to you. Well, why would we think this is God's strategy? Well, I've got one idea about where we might get this idea. We might get it from the story of Paul. Paul, who begged and pled with God to remove his thorn from his side. Which, by the way, I've joined Paul in that as well. Having a long history, including, not history, but present-day troubles with kidney stones. I know what a thorn in your side can feel like. And when Paul asked God to remove it, God's answer was not, yeah, well, when you get perfect and then I'll love you enough, I'll take it away from you. You need to get better. Or, yeah, Paul, when you do a good enough job reaching those Gentiles, when you reach your sales goals, I'll take it away from you. That's not what he said. He said, Paul, I'm giving you this so that you'll rest in me. So that you'll know I'm the one. I'm the one who takes care of you. And so God does to Jacob. Teaches him dependence. Jacob, don't go into this encounter by yourself. You need to go with me, and I will go with you. And in fact, I'm going to hurt your legs so you can't go in the opposite direction. You're going to come with me. The question is not whether I'm on your side or Esau's side. The question is whether you're on my side or not, because I'm going forward, and I want you to come with me, but I want you to lean on me when you do. This is not a moment where the message is dare to be a Daniel. This is not a moment where the message is be brave and courageous like David was when he went into the valley to confront Goliath. The message here instead is not just know your limitations, but know that you are nothing but limitations. You are the vessel through which God works, yes, but it is God's work and not your own by which he brings to pass his plan. Don't wrestle with God, but instead, when he gives instruction, when he sends you somewhere, when he gives you a message to deliver, your calling is simply to say to him, yes, sir. And then move forward in faith, knowing that his purposes will necessarily be accomplished, and that his purposes are the ones that count. When we come together next time, we're going to see the encounter that happens between Jacob and Esau. And we're going to find that God's grace was more than enough, that God was there, and we're going to rejoice over it.